Welcome, everybody. Thursday, July 13th. John Aravosis here with the Aravosis Report to update you on the latest news from the war in Ukraine. Coming to you live from Washington, D.C. Let me get TikTok rolling first on my iPad. I think this is good. Yes. Introduce yourselves. Maybe say what city you're from or country. Might help as well. And let me get TikTok going here. There we go. Okay, yeah, we'll wait. We'll do our usual. We'll wait probably about 2 minutes and then get rolling once everybody has joined us. Anyway, how are we? I am waiting for all my Amazon Prime Day purchases to arrive. I didn't get anything big. I got a lot of small stuff that I need, so it was useful. Some fun stuff, some boring stuff. I did get Sasha a bed. Not that she needed another bed, but you know, the dog we spoil. So what do you do? But yeah, no, it was. I got a lot of good stuff. I think. Let's see, hopefully. Thank you, Mads. And John. The gifts are already pouring in on TikTok. Thank you, guys. Anyway, yeah, so what's going on, guys? Decently busy news day. So hopefully I'm not going to drag this out too long with the news updates, but there's, like I said, a decent number of news updates. Hang on, just putting my temperature up. Thank you, user. A little higher, or a little lower, I should say. Oh, hello from Belgium, Otan. Look at you, traveling NATO. Oh, you got a TikTok video reply from a Russian troll. That's a little scary. Hey, Ellie, or was it hilarious? Actually, maybe later I'll have to read the top 10 Russian troll comments we've received. Somebody kept track. I think it was it Flower Lady? I'm already forgetting. Kept track of them, and it was very funny. So a very funny list. Thank you, LWD. All right, guys, another half minute, and then we'll get rolling here. I'm just waiting for folks to arrive. Russia. All right, let me get up. Thank you, Big Hawk, for the Frankfurter, and Elizabeth, and Life, and who else? Nope, that's what we got. All right, guys. Thank you, Pedro. So, all right, I'm going to get rolling here. So thank you, guys. Thank you for the gifts on TikTok already. Very nice of you. I am John Aravosis. Welcome, welcome. This is my nightly show, Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S., where we talk about the latest news from Ukraine. I am coming to you live from Washington, D.C., and the way the show works is for about the first half of the show or so, I will update you on the news, tell you the stories that I think matter, why I think they matter. Second half of the show, I will take your questions. Just to remind folks, I've got TikTok here on my iPad, and I've got YouTube and other folks over there on my laptop. That's why you'll see me kind of looking back and forth to submit questions. Pretty much, well, because TikTok in its ingenuity took away the question feature. Thank you, Bradley. I will look again, but I'm pretty sure TikTok, my question feature is still missing because TikTok. Oh, it is. Oh, TikTok. Silly TikTok. So on TikTok, you just have to throw questions on the screen. On YouTube, everywhere else, you can throw them on the screen. Ashley, thank you. Not necessary, but thank you. You already do so much work here. As one of our wonderful moderators, but thank you. But super chat questions, you guys can always submit super chat questions on YouTube as a way of helping and supporting my work. Those are the questions you buy. You guys don't have to pay for questions, of course, but if you get a super chat question as a way of trying to help me out on YouTube, I will always get to that as my next question. In other words, I guarantee I'll answer that question whenever you bring it up. And on TikTok, we don't have anything for questions, unfortunately, but we do have the gifts. Thank you, Elizabeth, case in point. And I will always try to do a shout out when I see the gifts, the big ones pop up, unless I miss it. So I apologize if I miss it, but usually I do see them. So thank you. And let's get rolling. All right, guys. So it's day 554 of Vladimir Putin's special 3-day military operation in Ukraine. President Biden was in Finland today, or probably still is. Gave a press conference, whatever. Thank you, Suzanne, or a speech. I don't really report to you guys on the rah-rah speeches, meaning President Biden gets up and gives a speech about we're going to support Ukraine, whatever. I mean, that's fine, but I just feel like that kind of stuff isn't news to tell you. A politician gave a speech. What was interesting in the speech is Biden threw in a phrase where he said, Putin has already lost. Now, that to me was interesting. I saw some commentators say they felt like, that was a gaffe. Biden should have never said that. Now, give me a break. I mean, what? You know what I mean? It's going to make Putin angry. I mean, the guy's already having enough problems. I just thought it was interesting. I thought it was interesting for Biden to say that. It certainly um, provides some moral support for Ukraine, I guess, as I would say, by saying Putin's already lost. It helps keep the reason for us staying in the war. In other words, this isn't a lost cause on Ukraine's side at all, because right, Putin's the lost cause. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting. I figured I'd start with that. In terms of the counteroffensive, Ukraine's deputy foreign minister says Ukraine has captured several settlements south of the town of Orikhiv, just southeast of Zaporizhia. That is more or less on my handy dandy t-shirt map around here. Actually, I'll use my pen. So more or less around here. Remember, the counteroffensive overall, okay? The Russians control all of this, all of this, all of this. So up to the river here, kind of cutting over and then up, all of this. A lot of the battle's been going around Bakhmut. A lot of the battles sort of southwest of Donetsk here. A lot of battles sort of here, southeast of Zaporizhia. But there's also fighting going on further up here, Kupiansk and some of the places that have been fought at before, some others. In any case, the deputy foreign minister says several settlements were captured south of Orikhiv. So in other words, Ukrainians did take back some land here, which is good. They're advancing south of Bakhmut, but meeting strong resistance. Bakhmut, remember, is here, the city the Russians took 11 months to get. The Ukrainians are trying to get it back to basically embarrass the Russians and cause more friction between Prigozhin and the Russian Ministry of Defense. So that's around here. There's also heavy fighting near Kupiansk and Liman, which is north of Bakhmut. So that's Kupiansk. I'm going to say Kupiansk around here. Liman's further south. I may not get it exact, but Kupiansk and Liman are up here. Bakhmut's down here. Avdiivka or Avdiivka. Maybe that's it. Is it Avdiivka? Anyway, it's two I's, which always confuses me, which is just north of Donetsk. So yeah, Avdiivka is right around here. So we've got a number of hot pockets. We've got a couple up here. We've got here. We've got here. We've got here. So there's a number of hot pockets where fighting's taking place. At least in several of them, the Ukrainians have made some advancements. Now, there was some talk yesterday. I mean, I'll tell you about it anyway. I almost was going to put it in the show, and then I took it out of the show because I thought I don't like giving you guys stuff that I think is goofy. And I thought this was kind of a goofy statistic. Basically claiming that, Ukraine has captured more land in the counteroffensive in 3 weeks than Russia did in like 9 months or no, since the beginning of the year. And I was like, well, yeah, but Russia didn't really capture anything since the beginning of the year other than Bakhmut. So I don't know that says, you know what I mean? I mean, yes, Ukraine has captured more land than Russia did in the last half year, but that's because Russia did terribly in the last half year and didn't capture much of anything. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. You may hear that statistic. I'm just mentioning it because I try not to sort of give you rah-rah stuff that I think is a little bit bogus. And I think that explanation is a little bit bogus. I mean, Ukraine is getting their land back slowly, and that's good. But, I'm not going to anyway, you get what I'm saying. In Talkmock, this was interesting news. So in Talkmock, which is about halfway between Zaporizhia and Melitopol, the town of Talkmock is go about halfway and then a little bit east. So Talkmock is more or less around here, okay, middle of Russian occupied territory again in the south. And the Ukrainians say as many as 200 Russian soldiers and the commandant of the Russian occupied town of Talkmock itself have reportedly been killed in a recent strike on a Russian base. Now, the Russian military bloggers did mention that there was some kind of an explosion in the area, and the Ukrainians are saying that they were able to taking out 200 troops and a commander. That's huge. U.S. cluster bombs have reportedly arrived in Ukraine today. They're not being used yet. I don't know how many have arrived. It may be a first ship. My guess would be it's a first shipment probably, but nonetheless, that's good news. We just have to wait and see how long it takes for Ukraine to integrate them. Actually, that will be interesting to see. Now that we know they're in country, it almost gives us a sense of how long does it take for stuff to get sort of in Ukraine and then go to the front. We'll see. Alan, thank you so much for the super sticker, Alan. That was really generous of you. Thank you. General. So we have lots of news about general. So remember yesterday I told you guys there was the news that the general down in Berdyansk, so down here, again, Ukrainian town occupied by the Russians, that the Ukrainians blew up a hotel that was being used to house the Russian military. And they blew up the hotel. And among other people, they killed a Russian lieutenant general. But a lieutenant general in Russia is a very senior. It doesn't, here it sounds like, oh, not quite a general. This guy they killed is the most senior Russian official killed throughout the entire war. So this was a big deal. Now, that was the news yesterday. We've got two, maybe three, two more general announcements, so to speak. A couple different things. Retired U.S. General Robert Abrams says he thinks Prigozhin is already dead. Now, I wanted to bring this up just because people were already asking me about it. He's a guy, okay? An American general, which is fine, okay? But he's an American general, and he thinks. Sorry, thank you, Red Watts. I wanted to think. I was in the middle of it and didn't want to stop mid thought, but you guys are throwing gifts at me, so I'll thank you, Red Watts and Gaia. Thank you. He's an American general. He doesn't have any proof. He simply said he thinks that Prigozhin has been killed. But he doesn't have any proof of it, and he's not basing it, at least from what we know, on any kind of any kind of thing. So I'm just bringing it up there in case you hear, oh, Prigozhin was killed. That's where it's coming from. Now, I am seeing some people say lieutenant general is a 3-star general. I had seen somebody yesterday say that a lieutenant general was a 4-star general. I don't know. But a couple of you are saying 3 stars, so I'm going to go with you guys. So you can imagine a 3-star general in the U.S. would be a very senior general. So that's the highest. That is the level of general. Thank you, Adventures. That's the level of general that was killed, which is a big deal. Meanwhile, the Pentagon says that the Wagner Group is not participating in any significant way in the fighting in Ukraine. That's interesting because that would seem to back up the notion. Yesterday, we heard, thank you, Mark. Yesterday, we heard that most of the Wagner Group's equipment had already been turned over to the Russian military in Ukraine. Now we're hearing from the Pentagon that they're not participating in any kind of a significant way in Ukraine. That's interesting to me, right? I mean, to me, that suggests that Wagner is basically out when it comes to Ukraine. Oh, thank you for the gift. Who's that? Kelly. Thank you, Kelly. That's really interesting. And the reason I bring this up is because the Wagner Group, I mean, Putin in a way doesn't have a choice. The Wagner groups are the guys who tried to overthrow his government. So what's he going to do? He has to take them out. He has to, at the very least, get them out of there because they can't be trusted, right? The problem becomes, Ash, just block that person. They're a troll. But hey, David, thank you for that. The Wagner Group are the best fighters Putin's got. Thank you, Malcolm. They're nasty. They're war criminals. I mean, they're total murderers and thugs and literally prisoners. But they're the best troops Putin's got. And the fact that Putin has no choice but to sideline them in this war is wonderful news for Ukraine. And really bad news for Putin because, again, the best fighters he's got in Ukraine, he's now got a sideline. So that's good news. The Wall Street Journal reported, the Wall Street Journal reported an interesting story today that within hours of Prigozhin beginning his coup attempt, Putin had a number of senior Russian military officials taken into custody, including General Surovkin. Now, General Surovkin is the guy we've been talking about for a couple of weeks now. The one who yesterday we heard he was resting, and we were like, oh, sure, he's resting. Surovkin is the guy who is really good friends with Prigozhin, the Wagner Group leader. When Prigozhin launched his coup, thank you, Boy Mom. When Prigozhin launched his coup, Surovkin came out and did a video publicly calling on Prigozhin to stop the coup. And he looked very uncomfortable in the video, like somebody had forced him to do it, right? The next day or two, I think it was the Washington Post. I think it was the Post. I want to sort of give credit, but I don't remember who it was. Comes out and reports that U.S. intelligence or NATO intelligence says that Prigozhin, the coup leader, told General Surovkin in Russia that he was going to do the coup. And it's not clear whether Surovkin did anything about it, right? Well, what happens? We now find out from the Wall Street Journal, they have had Surovkin in custody since the coup. They took the guy into custody. They've been interrogating him, and they haven't let him go now. Is it 2 weeks, 3 weeks since the coup happened? He's in big trouble. Now, two of his top deputies were also taken into custody. They were subsequently released, but they were relieved of their duties. So more sort of mayhem in the Russian military, which again, great. I mean, great. Keep this in mind too, right? All of this is just feeding this doubt and division and mistrust and people getting pissed off because their guy is getting punished and this kind of stuff, right? Thank you, Malcolm. And it's just feeding that kind of morale crisis basically in the Russian military. There's a little more, not on Surovkin, right? So we got Surovkin. Another general story about a general. A top general was fired by Putin. Now, this story came out like, I don't know, a day and a half ago. Initially, I didn't mention it to you guys because I didn't think it really mattered. I mean, it's fine. A top general gets fired. That's fine. But I wasn't quite sure how it tied in with everything else. Now it feels more like it's tying into everything with this sort of concern at the top in Moscow and lopping heads left and right. So let me read you this from the Washington Post. In Russia, Major General Ivan Popov claimed he was forced to retire after highlighting problems with the army fighting in Ukraine, according to a voice message published by a Russian lawmaker. Quote, in the name of you and our fallen combat friends, I had no right to lie, so I outlined all the problems existing in the army, Popov said, citing a lack of artillery and mass deaths and injuries of soldiers. Senior officials sensed danger in me and promptly in one day made up an order and got rid of me, he said, suggesting divisions within the army over the conduct of its war effort. That's great because you've got this guy, and first of all, he's willing to do an audio and release it publicly, right? I mean, ballsy for Russia. Actually, that would be ballsy here in the States, let alone for Russia, a general doing that. Second of all, the reason he gets fired is because he complained internally that the war was going badly and they weren't enough supplies. There wasn't enough artillery. I think at one point he may have talked about how basically they fired on their own men, which might have been something we heard about this last weekend. There was a video that came out showing Russian troops basically screaming for help to other Russian troops. Thank you, Arthur. Screaming to other Russian troops saying, stop firing on us. You're firing on your own people, right? This guy got fired for defending the troops. He got fired for criticizing the senior leadership of the military, who is the same leadership that Prigozhin was criticizing. I think that's why this guy is fired, because basically they're trying to get rid of anybody they think is not dishonest, disloyal. And because even if he's not a Prigozhin guy, he's making Prigozhin arguments, which frankly are probably correct arguments, right? That the war isn't being fought correctly and the guys at the top aren't doing a good job, but they sacked him for it. As I said before, it just causes more friction. It causes more distrust. It causes all the other generals to go, am I going to be next, right? Am I going to be the next guy that's going to be sacked? Am I going to be the next guy that's going to be demoted? Or like Surovkin pulled into custody for 2 weeks. It's just on and on and on. I see the trolls are freaking out today. We're having a troll freak out. Yeah, they've been getting more and more freaking out, haven't they? I mean, I know I don't spend a lot of time on the trolls, but to me, the trolls are an interesting barometer. Meaning the sort of nasty paid Russians who come, or they pay people from around the world to come, but they're really freaking out. And remember, when the trolls freak out, and you notice a lot of these guys come, it means Russia's worried, which is an important thing to keep in mind because actually, like I said, it's a really nice barometer of how Russia's doing. What else here? Yeah, anyway, so that one I thought was very interesting. I will do a quick pitch for my membership stuff that I like to do. So one of the things I always hit you guys up for is possibly becoming a monthly member to subscriber, to basically to support my work with a monthly donation. The idea is that I've been doing this work for full time since the war started. So back in February of last year, I do it full time, which means I'm not taking salary from anywhere else. This is my income, whatever I make from the gifts you guys give me on TikTok, the YouTube, Twitch, etc. The auctions we do over on Discord. And one way that is actually very helpful for me, but again, only for folks who can afford it, is if you could set up a monthly subscription where basically you just $7.99, whatever it is per month. Now, On YouTube, the really easy way to do it, I've set up YouTube subscriptions now. You click the dollar sign at the, you can just check it out right now. You don't have to pay, obviously, but you can look at it. Dollar sign at the bottom of the comment box. Click it, and you see the super stickers and the super questions, which are other ways you guys can help, and the membership. The membership, if you click it again, it shows you the membership options. That it's just a monthly bill. Monthly, and you can turn it off whenever you want. But what's nice about it is it lets me see how much money is coming in each month. So I'm not necessarily having to beg you guys for gifts. And it makes you a VIP member of our Discord community, which gives you access to the weekend show that I do just for the paid subscribers, our VIP auction we do, and other things. For you guys on TikTok, the easiest way is probably using Ko-fi. You can find Ko-fi website via my Linktree link. Go to my bio, or you can do it after the show, whenever. Go to my bio on TikTok, and you'll see a link in the middle that says Linktree. Click it, and it brings up a page of all of my links. On the very top link, you'll see a site called Ko-fi. It's like ko-fi.com. It may not, I don't even know whether it tells you the whole URL. Click it, and Ko-fi is another way that you can either give a one-time donation or a monthly donation. Now, if you do one time, that's great anyway. But if you do a monthly, then that again will make you a VIP member of my Discord community. It will give you access to our VIP auctions, our Saturday show, but also more generally, it just supports my work. And some people call it coffee. I called it coffee, and people were like, it's Ko-fi. So the geeks got mad at me when I called it coffee. So coffee, Ko-fi, banana. No, banana. I think we all say banana the same way. Tomato. But anyway, you can go find the link in my bio. I mean, it's ko-fi.com/Aravosis. Link is in the bio. Please check it out. And let me get back to work here. Oh, and finally, Twitch folks, you can subscribe to, same thing, VIPs, but you can use the Amazon Prime to become a Twitch member and support my work at the Aravosis account. It's at Aravosis, my Twitch account there. All right, let's keep going, guys. Biden says this was interesting. So Biden got asked today, or was talking today, about Putin's potential use of nuclear weapons, right? And he responded that there's no real prospect of Putin using nukes in Ukraine or anywhere else. That was good to hear him say that. Biden is the one, remember, that especially at the start of the war, kept talking about World War III, which, first of all, is bad news anyway. I mean, anybody giving you sort of advice how to do media work, my Google, I think, thought I was, or Alexa thought I was talking. I don't know. One of them heard me. But you don't use the phrase World War III. Like, you don't want people hearing that phrase. That freaks people out, right? Thank you, Tukas. Even if you were to say there won't be World War III, you're talking about World War III with regards to Ukraine. It freaks people out, right? Well, so Biden kept talking about World War III, and we've got to be careful what weapons we give Ukraine, because if we give them like the fighter jets, it could be World War III with Russia. Just bad messaging. Now he's coming out and saying that, and again, the quote was, there's no real prospect of Russia either using nukes against the West or using them in Ukraine. And he said in particular, it's because China especially sat down with Putin and said, don't do it. I thought that was very interesting. What's interesting to me is it also is showing Biden's mindset, which means Biden is now at the point where he thinks the nuclear threat from Putin is basically bogus. That's important because it means and explains why Biden, I think, has been more willing to give more weapons and better weapons, right? That we've been wanting, cluster bombs, et cetera, that we've been wanting him to give Ukraine. Russia is threatening to pull out of the Black Sea grain agreement. It's time to sort of update you on this because it may happen in the next few days, plus or minus. But you may recall that Ukraine exports a lot of grain. Ukraine, along with Russia, are two of the biggest, if not the biggest, grain producers in the world. Ukraine exports a lot of it here from Odessa and another port down here. And Russia, which, while Russia controls all of this, but Russia itself is over here too, Russia was threatening to blow up the Ukrainian ships. So for about 3 months at the beginning of the war, Ukraine couldn't export any grain. Finally, a deal was reached by the United Nations, Turkey, Ukraine, and Russia that Ukraine could go ahead and export the grain. Russia wouldn't shoot it, but the ships would have to go and be inspected and all this kind of garbage to make sure they weren't carrying weapons, whatever. Russia kept, every time the agreement came up to be renegotiated, because it would be continued for 60 days or 3 months or something like this, Russia would whine and try to say that they were going to kill it. Once again, they're saying they're going to kill it. They keep wanting the sanctions against them lessened. This time, the United Nations has put forth a proposal, and the fact that the UN is doing it makes me think Europe and America agreed to Europe, America, and Canada agreed to this, but they're proposing that one of the Russian banks establish a subsidiary, and the subsidiary can be connected to the SWIFT banking system, basically letting Russia create a bank that would be exempt from the sanctions. And that way, that bank would be able to do a lot of the commercial transactions. My concern, of course, I haven't really seen much analysis on this, but my concern is I'm not quite sure why we do this anyway. Why would we do this? Why would we help Russia out? I mean, I'm with General Stavridis on this. You know, we really ought to just go and escort the boats. Stavridis had said we should just escort the boats with our military and tell them you want to shoot it, shoot it. I'd say you use NATO military. I'd say use the Pope's military as well. I mean, use the Pope, not military, but use the Pope's boats, use the Vatican's boats and just dare Russia to shoot them because Russia's not going to do it. Russia's not going to open fire on our ships. I really don't get it. I just really don't get it. Anyway. Anyway. Beep, 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 beep. But anyway, so we'll see. He proposed it to them. Putin may say no. I don't know. Oh, I'm sorry. One other point I was going to mention on the grain deal. What's interesting about that is that looking at who receives Ukraine's grain, I believe the top country receiving Ukraine's grain exports from the port there is China. So very interesting if that is just very interesting, right? Because I would suspect then the Chinese are going to weigh in and go, Oh, all right. Angel's getting its wings. There we go. I took out the World War III guys just so that the YouTube monitors know that guy was clearly a troll. Maybe you all were getting ready to get him, but it's hard to tell sometimes, but like, I think as I've been doing this for 30 years, you can just tell. And Zen Journalist is about to be banned because he keeps posting the same question repeatedly. So keep an eye on that one too. All right. The Hungary. Oh yes. Hungary. So Turkey basically, Hungary turned to Turkey and said, take my beer or whatever, or hold my beer, whatever the expression is. So I told you guys yesterday how Turkey is playing games with Sweden's NATO membership, right? And how basically earlier this week, remember, Turkey said, oh, we're happy to welcome Sweden into NATO. And we were all like, yay, and everything was great. Then we found out yesterday that Erdogan, the wannabe dictator of Turkey, the president there, says, well, we won't really be able to consider this until October because the state, the legislature, the parliament has to pass something that says we accept Turkey joining NATO. Each legislature in every country has to do this. So Erdogan says we won't be able to do that till October because the parliament's not going to be in session until then. Well, the parliament is out of session in August and September, but it's not out of session in July. They've got 2 more weeks. They're not out of session until July 29th. But Erdogan just decided we don't want to do it in the next 2 weeks. He then says, and this is interesting, he then says, well, Sweden, mind you, Turkey is verging on a dictatorship at this point. I mean, verging. It's not quite there, but it's trying really hard under Erdogan. Our parliament isn't convinced, I'm paraphrasing, but he basically says our parliament isn't convinced, and Sweden is going to have to convince our parliament that they're worthy of joining NATO. Okay. And there's lots of things Sweden needs to do before the election in October, the vote in October. So thank you, Dora. Turkey's playing major games. Hungary then announces today that they will take up Sweden's NATO bid in mid-September. That's 2 months from now, because there's no rush, they said, because Erdogan's not going to do it until October anyway. I think Hungary is intentionally slow walking it because Hungary doesn't want to do it if Erdogan doesn't do it, because for whatever reason, the two of them are doing this in tandem. So it's so freaking obnoxious. But Erdogan, I'm telling you guys, I do. I hope Congress comes down on him like a ton of bricks, really, because they need to. Next story. Oh, and keep the gifts coming on TikTok. You're getting slow on me. Don't get slow on me. Actually, I always forget to ask people too to click the likes and to follow too. Always on YouTube and TikTok and everywhere else, make sure you click the like button, click the follow buttons, all the different buttons. Please do. I am absolutely pro NATO expansion, aren't you? Sean, because NATO expands and it protects countries from getting basically destroyed by evil dictatorships like Russia. Thank you, Sean, Tugas, Ocean. The Olympic Committee weighed in, actually did a decently good thing. Knowing the Olympic Committee, I almost am afraid to comment on this because I know it's probably backhanded, but they will not be sending an official invitation for the 2024 Olympics to Russia and Belarus. The players will probably be able to compete. Thank you, Verna. The players will probably be able to compete on their own, and Timothy Leary as well. Thank you. But they will not be able to fight as part of a national team. That's good. It still is annoying because these guys still are able to, in these countries, thank you, Ali, in these countries, they use sports as politics. And the fact that these guys are playing and winning and they're Russians or they're Belarusians will still help the war effort. But, getting the Olympic Committee to do the right thing is next to impossible. Finally, this wasn't a very long news day. Finally, there's a poll in Russia. Now, polls in Russia, who the heck knows, right? Because it's Russia. I mean, it's a quasi dictatorship, and if you give the wrong answer, you could go to jail. But putting out that caveat, almost 3/4 of Russians oppose the use of nuclear weapons during the military operations in Ukraine, according to a survey by the Russian Field Sociology Company. Respondents in the survey were asked, in your opinion, is it acceptable or unacceptable to use nuclear weapons if this is required to win the military operation in Ukraine? 74% said unacceptable. Only 11% said acceptable. That's interesting. Again, I kind of worry as to whether we know what the Russians really think, but that's a hell of a, let me put it this way. What's interesting to me about that is Russians are going to lie to protect themselves in a quasi dictatorship, right? The appropriate response is either not to give an answer or to say nukes, because the question was, if we needed to do this to win the war, should we do it? In a dictatorship, the appropriate answer is yes, we must win the glorious war, right? So I'm a little surprised that 74% would say no and only 11% would say yes. Or I'm surprised that more people aren't sort of in the middle, that would kind of step back and go, well, we're not going to, I don't know, right? Because I don't know would be a safe answer. But that was a pretty strong answer. Real quick, we've got a super chat question or whatever. Phoenix, I was reading something. If Russia loses, it gets divided into smaller countries with China getting a big portion. What are your thoughts? I mean, I think the thinking isn't that Russia will be divided, passive voice by whom, but that Russia could fall apart. That is that's a possibility. I don't know how possible a possibility, but Russia, I saw the other day somebody describing Russia as a external empire and an internal empire. And the external empire meant they go and they invade their neighboring countries and try to swallow them up and literally annex them as part of Russia, right? What they're doing in Ukraine, for example. I mean, they literally took the land in the south and now the land in sort of the southeast. They've made it Russia, even though it's not really, but they're claiming it's Russia. But they're also an internal empire in the sense that their country is made up of a lot of different ethnic groups, but they're ethnic groups that are each in their own areas, and they're kind of part of Russia because Russia's making them be part of Russia, right? That they wouldn't be part of it if they weren't forced. So the question is whether, thank you, killers, the question is whether if Putin were to lose the war, would it be perceived as enough weakness of the center of Moscow, the Moscow government, that some of these ethnic groups, some of these people on the periphery might say, you know what, screw you, we're going free. We finally feel like we have the possibility to become free of you because you're clearly so weak. Thank you, Embedded Roots. Who knows? I mean, I don't know. I mean, if they lose the war, thank you, Dora. The question kind of becomes, just because they lose the war, thank you, Poppy, doesn't mean that they don't have a strong, well, I don't want to say a strong military, but if you're talking about some of the regions in Russia, they're maybe not going to be as hard to quell as the Ukrainians, being a totally different country. I don't know, But in any case, that I just don't know. But that's I don't want to say the concern, because it depends who you talk to, whether it's a concern or a hope. Ukrainians would probably tell you it's a hope, that Russia falls apart. Because if Russia falls apart, it'll be even weaker. But all right, I will do a quick pitch for our Discord auctions, and then we will do Q&A. Now, we've got a lot of new auction items up on our Discord. So what we do is, one of the ways that I support myself, because as I said, I do this full time, do it for free, but I'm not rich, so I've got to pay my bills, and I do that with your guys' gifts. Thank you very much. And one of the things we do is we do auctions over on our Discord, and it's discord.aravosis.com. You can find the link in my profile with the Linktree link. You guys can find it at the bottom of the screen over there. There it is. And actually, the aravosis.com link will take you to the Discord and everything else. But one of the things we do is we have auctions of really cool stuff that I get in Ukraine. Some of it's donated, other stuff I buy, other stuff we've had. You guys have actually made some beautiful jewelry and things that we've been auctioning. And 50% of the money I take to basically be my income so I can keep doing the show. 50% I decided early on we would donate to Ukraine, and we've been doing that. I got to do the number now, but it's certainly over 10,000. It could even be 12,000 at this point, that we've done just from the auctions. We've done 100,000 that we've given to Ukraine in donations overall that we've raised from you guys. That's a different number, the 100,000, but this is an additional amount from just the auctions. Any case, so the auction stuff, we've got another 8 or 9 auction items this week. I'm not going to show you all of them. Thank you, Julius. I will do your question after this, but let me show you a few of them. I've got a really cool Russian military hat from Ukraine. What's interesting about this is it's a new Russian military hat. The label is still on there. You can see I left the label on because I thought it was kind of cool. The label's on there. The hat's a little bit dirty, but the label's on, and it makes me think that basically this is a hat the Ukrainians got when they overran the Russian positions, and they found Russian stocks. So they found, a pile of Russian hats that were used for new recruits. They weren't used yet, so the tag's there, but the tag is dirty. So that's what this is. Now, what I like about this one, I don't know if you can see, is the buttons on the side, because the buttons on the side are sort of the Russian crest. It's sort of the imperial crest or whatever with is it 3 birds or 2 birds? You can sort of see there. It's not really super in focus. I don't know if you guys can see. Yeah, you guys can see better. It almost looks like the American seal, but it's not. It's the Russian one with the bird with like the 3 heads. It's funny. It does look a little bit like our eagle. Anyway, this thing's very cool. Auctioning off another Azov-style bracelet. These are the bracelets made from the steel that comes from the Azovstal steel plant. The Ukrainian government made these as a fundraiser. Thank you, Adrian. And they are basically to honor the Azov battalion, the 2,000 Ukrainian troops who held off the 14,000 Russian troops for 2 months in Mariupol in southern Ukraine. And these are neat because it's the steel and they've got the Ukrainian trident on it. But I love these. These are really nice. There you go. 2 more, and then we'll jump to the questions. What was I going to? I was going to show. Well, maybe just this. Okay, I was going to. Oh, I know. Here we go. I was wondering. Coffee mugs, Ukrainian coffee mugs. Now, this is fun because this is the Russian warship Go F Yourself coffee mug. Now, the Ukrainian government made these, so I think they didn't want to go all the way. So it says Russian warship Go ... in Ukrainian, because they didn't want to say F yourself, I think, in Ukrainian, on an official government coffee mug. But they're really cool. And the final thing, and this is the last box of these actually that we've got. I've been admittedly, thank you. Now, Peter, if you had a question, feel free to submit it as well. I see a very generous donation from Peter Rotter. I don't know if you meant to have a question. If you did, feel free to submit it. And mods, if you can make sure I see his question. This last one is very cool. This was a box put together by a Ukrainian charity, and they were raising money. Thank you, Chief. And had to give them a sizable donation to get this, but it was worth it. And it is a box containing a piece. It's got a little brochure that explains it and everything, but it is a piece of a Russian fighter jet that was shot down over Ukraine, which is very cool. This is a particularly nice piece. This is a pretty big one, you can see. And Yep, you can see sort of both sides of it. This one's kind of cool because it comes with a screw. Now the screw actually probably goes more on the other side because it's blue like this color, but when I screwed it in the other side, it didn't stay. So I've got it in this side, but it's really cool because it's a piece of the fighter jet. Actually, I like it that it's got the holes. The holes are from the, what do you call I'm spacing out, not the rivets, rivets, whatever, rivets, maybe rivets, but the stuff that holds the different plates of metal together. But it's very cool. But it's made from titanium, which is neat. Oh, I always like to show people. It's neat, the rivets. Yeah, it's neat because it's crazy hard because it's made from titanium. Anyway, this is really cool. I always like auctioning these off because I think they're really cool. And I researched it because they know the pamphlet that comes with it says which plane it is, where it was found, when it was shot down. So I did my own research and put together like a couple page fact sheet or 3 pages or whatever on the pilot. The pilot according to the Ukrainian news, the pilot supposedly joined the Russian fighters that are fighting Russia now, according to the Ukrainian news. Now, whether that's true or not, who knows? But really interesting backstory as well. So it's very neat. Oh, aircraft mechanic in the Army. Oh, I should get you to look at some of the stuff. You can help me verify stuff. Actually, I'm going to write your name down. Best worst gamers. I'm writing that down so I can remember to reach out to you. I may message you. Best worst gamers. All right, guys. Let's do. So anyway, that's on our Discord. You can go check out the Discord, discord.aravosis.com. The auctions are free, but our VIP auction is for the paid members. What I told you, paid members on Ko-fi.com, paid members on YouTube, paid members on Twitch, etc. You can find them via aravosis.com or the link in my bio. Click it, and it'll bring up Ko-fi. For you guys, YouTube, you can just subscribe via the link at the bottom. All right. Okay, mods. We accidentally booted Lori on TikTok. Lori was talking about lying, but she wasn't talking about me. She was agreeing with me. Sorry, Lori. Lori Renzulli. Lori, can you tell us what your okay? Thank you, Michaela. I see that next. If you could tell us what your screen name is for the mods there, they can help you back on. Yeah, but Michaela, I don't mind people telling us here because that way then we can inform people over there. This is sort of the way we do it. We let people sort of complain here, and then we can tell the mods over there who got booted by accident. I've booted my fair share of people by accident, so don't worry. Julius, so yeah, Lori, put up your TikTok screen name there for folks on TikTok. Julius with a very generous question. Thank you, Julius. Let me get my glasses, actually. Oops, I can see this better. And then, yes, remind me, Peter, in a second. Julius had a super chat question first. Lori's is Lori, Lori, Renzulli, Renzulli, one word. So Lori Renzulli with 2 L's. Give it a try. Julius Goodwin, with the failed Wagner coup and its resulting purges and dysfunction, you'd expect to see more of an effect on the battlefield, but so far it appears minimal. Why do you think that is? I mean, you'd have to talk to somebody, either current or former military, to find out. Thanks, Kanausi. How does the morale thing work? What I mean is, if you have a shock to the system like 3 weeks ago. Happy birthday, Ken's. Very, very happy birthday on TikTok to Ken's. Everybody give Ken's a little birthday cake. We've got, I've got to make sure I put up a birthday emoji now that you're reminding me. We do need a little birthday emoji. Is there? I don't have one of my own. I'll have to put one up there for folks. All right. Hey, thank you for the good evening there. But yeah, happy birthday, Ken's. I don't know. Once you have a shock to the military system, like you had 3 weeks ago with the coup effort, and now you've got the Wagner troops being pulled out, and now this week you've got a general killed, a general that you find out has been under questioning, right? This kind of a general fired. How long does it take? How long does it take for the morale? Thank you, Andy. For the morale hit that causes in the military to rise to the level where it starts to impact the effectiveness of the military? I mean, I guess my question is, A, it's got to rise to a certain level before it has an impact, and B, how long does it take to have an impact? And I don't know. I don't know how I mean, let me put it this way. I don't know. I don't know on the soldier level. I would think on the general level, meaning generals, 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, right? On their level and the level of other top military people, they're all wetting themselves at this point, right? Are they going to be next? Thank you, Ash. Right? Their friend just got arrested. Their friend just got fired. They were friendly with what? Imagine anybody who was friendly with Prigozhin. Anybody who was, mind you, Prigozhin was Putin's best friend. You're right. So Prigozhin wouldn't have been something considered bad before. You've probably got, thank you, Flower Lady. You probably got a lot of Russian military folks who were friendly with Prigozhin because they thought he's Putin's guy, right? Well, if you were friendly with Prigozhin, you've now got to worry, are you next to be disappeared, right? To go to basically be dragged into the basement of the KGB, now called FSB in Moscow, right? I mean, so I guess what I'm saying is I could see it impacting military decisions at the top, even if we're not seeing it yet impacted at the bottom. You know what I mean? But also at the bottom, when you think about it, they've got Ukrainians are dealing with landmines. I mean, landmines can't get up and run. They've still got to deal with the landmines. They're also dealing with trenches. The trenches aren't going away. They've got to go there and go through the trenches one by one. So I just wonder to what degree that gets dragged out, you know? But I don't know. It's an interesting question, though, as to when would you see an impact? I just don't know. Good question, though. And then, yes. So did I mark it? Right. Peter Rotter. So Peter's question, I'm going to try to either write it down again, or I'm going to try to scroll up and see if I can find Peter's question. All right. Hold on. We're looking for. Oh, Peter's, here it is. Thank you, Michaela. Could Zelensky use a partial ceasefire and or peace agreement as a bargaining chip to be able to join NATO? Sure. I mean, the irony is, well, okay. It depends what you're asking, okay? First of all, who is Zelensky trying to impact? Is he trying to convince NATO to let him in, which is an issue, or is he trying to convince Putin to stop the war, which is an issue, right? He needs to sort of convince both. On the NATO side, and okay, then the second question I would have is, what do you mean by peacefire or a bargaining chip to be able to join NATO, or a ceasefire? I mean, a ceasefire or a peace agreement right now potentially freezes things where they are. That means Ukraine loses territory. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the, even Biden, for example, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the NATO folks are perfectly fine. When I say NATO, forget the Eastern NATO. Baltic countries, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Poland, they all do not want Ukraine to lose land. France and Germany and America probably couldn't care less if Ukraine lost land in the end, if there was a peace agreement. So sure, Ukraine might be able to get America, Biden to be much more pro them joining NATO if Ukraine said, we're willing to give up some of our land, let's just have the war end. But I don't see Ukraine doing that, right? That's the problem there. With Putin, I mean, joining with Putin, the question would be, the only bargaining chip you'd have with Putin and NATO is Ukraine saying, I'm not going to join NATO for 20 years or 30 years or whatever it is. That would have to be its bargaining chip there. Now, if I were Ukraine, I would probably say that, let the war end, and then say, screw you and join NATO really fast. But as we've seen with Sweden, you don't always join NATO really fast, right? It gets dragged out. So anyway, I mean, that's sort of my roundabout answer. It kind of depends the details of what your question really meant. You know what I mean? Anyway, thank you for that. Oops, let me scroll down here. All right. I've got, boom. All righty. Let's try to grab some TikTok questions. What else have we got? Is the global community better off with Ukraine in NATO? It depends what you mean. Thank you, Nico. It depends what you mean by the global community, right? There are many global communities. There's NATO, which, Europe and North America. There's Asia. Even within Asia, you've got China and you got kind of everybody else, right? A lot of the other ones that are basically more free. You've got Latin America. You've got Africa. So it depends. I mean, Ukraine as a member of NATO, I would say benefits the world overall because it takes away an incentive for Putin and the Russians to commit more war. Until the Russians get all of Ukraine, they're not going to stop attacking Ukraine. But if Ukraine becomes a member of NATO, Russia can't touch them, because then all of NATO would be at war with Russia and Russia would lose that war. There's really two possibilities if Russia goes to war with NATO. One, Russia loses not using nuclear weapons. 2, Russia loses using nuclear weapons, but we lose 2, right? So 1, no nuclear weapons are lost, or no nuclear weapons are used, and the West wins the war because we've got a much better military than the Russians. 2, nuclear weapons are used and we all lose. Either way, Russia loses either way. So, I mean, you are going to have a potentially more peaceful world, potentially, if Ukraine becomes a part of NATO. Certainly for Europe, and by the way, the flip side is also risky for the world. If Ukraine doesn't become a part of NATO, then Russia potentially is being rewarded for this war. If Russia doesn't lose all the land that it took from Ukraine, including Crimea, then the war was worth it. Certainly the initial war was worth it if it gets to keep Crimea. And that makes Russia perhaps more prone to do more of these kind of things in the future. I don't know. It's funny. That's a very college exam kind of question. It's not a bad question, but it's really broad, you know? You think NATO is showing weakness to Russia again, Urban Geeky? Actually, I don't think Urban Geeky was a troll, guys, whoever just banned them. That was a good question. Unless they did something else that was trolly, that was a good question. Cindy? Or the one, you muted them. Yeah, I think that was a good... Were they? Okay. Oh, were they saying too many times? Okay. All right. Sorry. Thank you for the dino there. Okay. I was saying, because the question's a good question, though. Thank you, Sean, for the dino. Yes, the war has been happening since 2014. Correct. If Ukraine doesn't make more progress within the year, could we see Western support slow? 10 times? Okay, that's bad. Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, the Russians aren't wrong about this, I think. Unfortunately, the attention span, well, there's 2 things. Sorry. The attention span in the West, but also the naysayers. In America, especially, we've got to deal with the MAGA crowd. Not Republicans overall. A lot of Republicans are good on the war, but the leadership of the Republican Party, which is Donald Trump and his people, are anti-Ukraine and pro-Putin. And because they are, Fox News is, and the message gets filtered down to regular Republicans in this country saying, oh, Ukraine, that Zelensky, I hear he's corrupt, and this kind of crazy stuff, right? I hear he started the war, blah, blah, blah. So you do run the risk of that crowd using the fact that Ukraine, for example, the counteroffensive, nothing happens. For the next year, they fight and not much land changes hands. You run the risk of them saying, okay, this has been too much money, blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Thank you, Elizabeth. In general, I would say, look, for any country, if Ukraine isn't able to advance, let me rephrase this a different way. If Ukraine can't show a path to victory, people may not want to keep giving it weapons and money because they're going to say, well, you can't win this war, then why should we dump tens of billions of more dollars in, right? Now, the problem becomes, you do want, at the very least, for there to be, at the very least, you want a stalemate. You don't want a situation. We don't want Russia to keep the land that it's got, but we really don't want Russia to take the rest of Ukraine. So even if we were to, say, well, we're going to start cutting back our support. Thank you, Salty. We don't want Russia taking more of Ukraine because that does become more dangerous, for Europe overall. Thank you, Maverick. So I don't know, but yeah, I think it's kind of obvious though. If this counteroffensive were to stall for a year, it's not going to help Ukraine. Just because, as I said, at least behind closed doors, people are going to say, well, we're going to give you more money, but it's not helping, It's what's the expression? Good money after bad, right? They're going to say it was great helping you, but, if there's nothing else we can do, what do we do? YouTubers, happy to answer more of your questions. Syndicate, what are you saying? I personally think that even if Ukraine is part of NATO, NATO would still find a way not to invoke Article 5. Well, look, do you think Donald Trump would have invoked Article 5 if he were president and there were war in Europe? I don't know about that. I'm not convinced he would have. I am not convinced. Thank you, Jerry. I am not convinced that Donald Trump would have gone to war for a European country that was invaded by Russia. I just don't. Especially if it was, Poland or Estonia. In other words, not a traditional American ally like England or France, right? Or, the big 3, England, France, or, well, actually England and France and maybe Germany, right? And that's it. Thank you, Maverick, for that. But yeah, so oops, sorry. Thank you. Who's that? Thank you, Diana. But I think if you okay, I'm going to contradict. I'm not contradict myself. I'm going to say two things. I think if Ukraine is a member of NATO, the U.S., the U.K., Canada, and France and Germany as well would be sort of forced to enter the war if Russia were to attack. The Baltic states, the Baltic states would. Now, here's an interesting question. Actually, here's an interesting question. If Ukraine had joined NATO, let's say 2012, okay, before Russia invaded and took Crimea, and Russia invades either Russia invades in 2014 or Ukraine joins NATO in 2020 and Russia invades this time. Would Russia really not invade? We like to think they wouldn't because they'd be afraid of NATO. But would we? It's a very interesting question. Okay, Ukraine joins NATO in 2020. Russia invades in 2014, takes Crimea, the whole deal. Ukraine becomes a NATO member in 2020, and 2022, February 24th, Russia invades Ukraine, which is certainly possible because what if Russia's calculus is NATO, sure, they're a NATO member, right? But they're a newer NATO member. It's not like they're France or the UK. And what if Russia's calculus is all the reticence that we saw last year with Joe Biden and everybody else being very afraid of going nuclear with Putin? Why would Biden be willing to go nuclear with Putin if Ukraine's a member of NATO? Then not. Do you know what I'm saying here? Like, I still think what I worry about is Russia invades. Thank you, Rainbow. Russia invades. Ukraine's a member of NATO. And we do the same thing we did last year. We say, oh, well, we're going to come to your... NATO says we have to come to your aid. Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, JRD. We're going to give you lots of weapons. Now, some of the weapons we're not going to give you yet because we don't want Russia to use their nukes in the war, but we're going to come to your help. We're going to give you HIMARS over a period of months. We're going to give you Stinger missiles. We're going to give you, Patriot missiles at some point when you need them. F-16s, well, you don't really need F-16s yet. I mean, why? You could have Ukraine as a member of NATO and the exact same thing play out as played out over the last year. And NATO, the US and Europe would simply say, we're helping. Article 5 says we should come to your aid. We are coming to your aid. We're giving you F-16s. We're giving you tanks. Germany's going to give you Leopards. And so will the Europeans. We'll give you some Abrams tanks, but not until next year. F-16s, as I said, well, you don't need those yet. Why wouldn't that be the same argument that we made? I mean, this is, I had said last year, guys, when Biden was making all of the arguments about World War III, we can't have World War III with Russia, and giving weapons would be World War III. I said all along, if you're so afraid of nuclear war with Russia and you don't want to do anything that you think risks nuclear war with Russia, then you're never going to do anything that risks nuclear war with Russia. Thank you, Sunshine. Meaning, under no circumstance would you do anything that risks, even if he were to invade Ukraine. Why would you risk nuclear war if he invades Ukraine, right? Nuclear war means we all die. Well, isn't it better to have a NATO member get annexed by Russia than to have the whole world incinerated in a nuclear war, right? Article 5 does not mean boots on the ground. No. The problem, Hornet, is we had looked, first of all, there's two problems with Article 5. One, and I had talked to a former NATO defense minister before the war, like right before the war. And he'd explained to me, he said, first of all, Article 5 is not automatic. It doesn't just happen. NATO has to get together and decide if Article 5 should be invoked, and it has to be unanimous. That's the first problem, right? So you've got Hungary and everybody going, I don't think Article 5 should be invoked, right? That's the first problem. Second problem is Article 5, I don't have the language in front of me. Maybe somebody can grab it and you'll see, you can pull it up for everybody. Article 5 says something to the effect of each member should help to the degree they choose or something. It basically says every country should help to the degree to which they want to help, is what Article 5 says. Article 5 does not say you all declare war. It does not say you all put such action as deemed, there you go, such action as deemed necessary. Every nation should take such action as deemed necessary. That means you deem nothing necessary and you don't do it, right? So generally speaking, the US, I think, is the real powerhouse. UK is there as well. Canada is there probably alongside the US, but I think the UK would be the real powerhouse that would say, we're not going to stand for it. And the UK might even drag us into the war because the UK may say, that's it. We're going to war. If America, you're going to sit back, you can sit back again like you did last time, you know what I mean? Meaning, 1939. But in any case, I'm very worried about this. Yeah, as far as what we would actually do. I never had thought about it that way. It really is an interesting question. Whether NATO would just replicate exactly what we did this time if Ukraine were to join NATO and Russia invades again. We'd still be worried about Russia using its nukes. And we'd still be worried about, right? Think about it too. Well, if we give Ukraine weapons that can hit Moscow, then Russia may respond with nukes. Thank you, Mike. Right? Because let's face it, if war breaks out between NATO and Russia, our goal is still going to be not to use nukes and to make sure Russia doesn't use nukes. That's absolutely good. Even if we're at war with Russia, we don't want to be nuking each other. Thank you, M. Fuller, because we'll all die. So we're going to be making, I would argue, how about this? If we're at war with Russia, somebody like Biden would be even more freaked out because now we're at war with Russia. He'd be really careful not to piss off Putin. Thank you, Paul, for the raccoon. He'd be more than careful, or more careful than ever, to not piss off Putin and cause a nuclear war. Anyway, it'd be a good essay. Now you got me thinking about this. Now it'd be a very interesting essay. Julius, look at you back for more. Thank you for that. I sometimes feel I'm too hard on Biden. I sometimes feel that too. I mean, myself, not you. On Ukraine and his presidency overall, I'd rate him a solid B+. But with the rise of Trumpism and authoritarianism worldwide, thank you, Kathleen, for that, I feel we needed a solid A. Your thoughts? I think the situation is that, thank you again, Kathleen, very nice of you. What I don't like is people that fall short when they didn't have to fall short. In politics, I am more than willing to accept that you can't always get an A. Somebody told me that in a law job I was at. They said you can't always get an A, meaning sometimes the best job you can do is a B and you just have to accept it, right? So I think in politics, we need to accept the fact that we can't always get an A. By an A means the top grade. Sometimes you need to get the next grade down, right? That's a fair point. What I don't like, though, is when somebody gets a B who clearly could have gotten an A. And I feel like a lot of the stuff Biden did over the last year was stuff that he could have done more, but he was too afraid of Putin. So that he shouldn't have been as afraid. He should have gotten the fighter jets right away. He should have gotten the tanks right away, or at least promised American tanks if the Germans were being jerks about it, right? We should have gotten the HIMARS right away, but we should have done so many of the things right away. Now, I will admit, we don't know what constraints Biden was under. We don't know if the French, maybe the French and the German told him they would leave the coalition if America provided tanks or something. I don't know, right? It's possible that somebody behind the scenes had threatened to walk, and Biden said, oh, we can't have that. We got to hold the coalition together. And that's why Biden was slow. But that I feel like Biden could have done more. And I don't like it when politicians don't accomplish what they can versus what I want. I always want everything, but I want them to accomplish to the degree that they're able to not pull punches when they could have done more. But I agree with you. The thing with Biden is an interesting position because now with the economy, I mean, this gets us into not even politics or thank you, Anonymous, politics more generally. The U.S. economy is doing really well. And if anything, the problem with the U.S. economy, well, inflation's been a problem worldwide, but in the U.S., inflation's a problem because our economy is really freaking good. Well, not only is our economy really good, but inflation just dropped to 3% a year, which is huge. Thank you for the duck there, Sarah. Our inflation rate just dropped to 3% a year. Now, let's see over the next few months if it stays that way, right? I mean, who knows? But the economy is really good, and Biden has accomplished, I saw a Republican saying the other day, Biden accomplished like more than almost any presidency in decades in his first term. But Biden seems to be very good at, thank you, West Coast Wizard. Biden's very good at not getting credit for stuff. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if he doesn't ask for credit, or if he doesn't try to convince people. Thank you, Mike. For example, thank you, Jerry. Biden and his people don't try to convince you that Ukraine is is an important, just war. They really don't. Biden and his people don't ever talk about any of his accomplishments. They don't talk about the stimulus. They don't talk about anything. They don't talk about his infrastructure bill. And again, Ukraine, if anything, Ukraine, they kind of almost treat it as an embarrassment in a way, rather than let's talk every day about why this matters. But I think it's, any case, that's going off a tangent, but I think it's interesting because I think he doesn't get credit, and the question becomes why. And I think in the end, it's got to, it's partially him. Thank you, Maverick. He's got to claim credit for stuff, Thank you. Who is that? The West. I saw the West. The West. Oh, the West Coast Wizard. You again, Wizard. It could be. James is saying over on Facebook, do you think the Wagner coup could have been a ploy for them to backtrack through Crimea and attack Ukraine from the rear on the Eastern Front? I don't know about that. I will say that I am still seeing people who are, respected defense experts who still suspect that the whole Wagner coup thing could have been a whole plot with Putin. Basically, that Putin was a part of it, that it was a whole fake. It was a feint. Having said that, Putin ends up looking really weak. Thank you, Succeed and Russell. I think Putin ends up looking really weak from what happened there. That I don't think this helps Putin sort of grip on power. Thank you, Best Worst. You know what I mean? So it's possible Putin sort of was trying to organize this, but I kind of feel like it blew up in his face because the whole thing made Putin look weak. And that doesn't help him hold on to power because he can't tell people it was just fake, right? All the military people who are being dispirited and demoralized now, he can't tell them I was just faking, because then everyone's going to know. So the military people think, oh my God, the Russian public think, oh my God, Putin almost got overthrown. And then he had to negotiate with the guys. Weak Putin had to negotiate. So all of a sudden it rippled all across society that Putin's a weak leader. So it's possible, but it certainly, I don't think, makes him look very good. Anthony, thank you for that. Do you think now that Ukraine has the cluster bombs, will it make a difference to the front line? It's supposed to. Yeah, it's supposed to. Now, depends who you talk to, because the Ukrainians certainly feel that this is I think they even said it's a game changer, having the cluster bombs, because among other things, the cluster bombs will help them go through these lines of troops in the trenches, the landmines, the whole deal. People like General Hertling, on the other hand, former American general, very smart guy, very pro-Ukraine, but talking on the war. When the cluster munition issue came out, Hertling was saying he didn't really feel like it was a game changer. He said, no, they may help. He goes, but I don't think I forgot what his reasoning was, but he didn't feel, I know what his reasoning was. He said, yeah, you've got a lot of the Russian trenches, but when the cluster munition goes over like the shell and the shell opens up, you've got a lot of little bomblets that fall, but the bomblets could fall, he goes, they could fall 5 feet apart from each other or whatever. You've got to have the bomblets hit the trench, and it's got to hit, like he said, like a 2-foot hole in the trench. So there's a hole like this going into their little dugout, in the ground. You've got to have it get in that hole in order to kill them, or it's not going to work. So he felt like it was going to help, but it wasn't going to be a game changer. So who knows? Having said that, the Ukrainians think it's a game changer. And honestly, one thing we've learned from the beginning, we really ought to trust the Ukrainians on this stuff, because they've been right sort of all along, No, I think that's true, Fred. NATO will never use nukes. We know that. NATO and the US will never put boots on the ground. True, unless Russia does something crazy like using nukes, and Putin will never use nukes. I hope Putin will never use nukes. I know we will never use them first. I don't think he will, because I don't see a rationale for him doing it. It doesn't make sense him using the nukes, because then I think then we do enter the war if he uses nukes. We may not put boots on the ground, but we would perhaps bomb the hell out of his fleet if he used nukes. So that would be a problem. Let's look in here. They really are. It's funny. Keps is asking on YouTube, why do you think the media is making such a fuss about cluster bombs for Ukraine after they're mostly ignored Russia using them against civilians since the start of the war? Absolutely. This is one of those issues, and I don't know why. Hang on a sec. Sip of water. This is one of those issues that the media just loves being controversial about. I remember they were saying, how will Biden go to the NATO summit and be seen with a bunch of countries who have opposed using cluster bombs? What will he tell them? And you're like, okay, first of all, you moron, Biden has already called these countries. I guarantee you, Biden called these countries on the phone. All of the top allies, he's called them and talked about the cluster bombs before he did it. So it's not like, oh my God, Biden shows up at the party and he's so embarrassed because he's got to see the prime minister of the UK and he used, cluster bombs. That's not what's happening. It was really stupid. They also said it about the prime minister of the UK. Oh, it puts Richie Sunak in a very, a compromising position. It's like, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Why? Right? I mean, it's stupid. Are cluster bombs for piercing armor? I don't think so. I don't think they'd be armor piercing. I doubt it. I think cluster bombs, it's more the idea that because they're small, that you've got so many spreading out that if you've got something like, thank you, Ava, if you've got something like a lot of men in one area, you drop the bomb and you can take out a lot of soldiers at once, right? Which is the reason why, that's another reason Russia's been using it in civilian areas, because Russia has wanted to kill a lot of civilians. So you risk killing a lot of civilians using it like that. But they're not special rounds or anything, I doubt, because also if you got 100 of them inside, they will be effective. Well, that's what I was wondering. I think I asked this the other day though. Are cluster bombs useful for clearing minefields? Well, here's the problem. I'm guessing they're useful, but okay, cluster bombs, you drop them. Let's assume our numbers are good and 98%, 97% go off. When those bombs go off, okay, Callum's saying no, that's what I was thinking. My concern was they go off, but they kind of go off where they are. They don't necessarily set off every mine. So you still wouldn't know which mines aren't set off, right? Right? Callum or anybody, I'm assuming. They'll be useful during a firefight. Okay. Yeah, Callum was saying no. Cluster bombs are more for trenches and light vehicles or tents. Okay. You'd be wasting a lot of them. Okay. Yeah, Syndicate's weighing in too. Cluster bombs are generally not considered useful for clearing minefields. Cluster bombs are explosive weapons that disperse submunitions or bomblets over a wide area. Okay, you grabbed that from somewhere, I can tell, but that's a good explanation then. Yeah. Minimally damaged armored vehicles and tanks, right? Not surprising. They're used to, but basically they're useful against men, and that's what they're trying to get right now, or all the Russians in the counteroffensive. So let me look here. Deep Anthony, Julius, thank you for the lock-in key. Who was that? Maverick, thank you there. Let's do a couple more questions, guys, and then we can call it quits. It's already quarter after the hour. We did a Discord last night. I won't do it tonight, but we can maybe do one tomorrow. Actually, you know what we can do? We can hang out for a couple minutes. But you know what I'll do tonight? I'll hang out for a couple minutes just on TikTok with the TikTok subscribers, because I don't think I can do that on YouTube. I don't think there's a way for me to switch it mid-broadcast, but on TikTok I can. So as a thank you to the TikTok subscribers, don't get upset, YouTubers. I'll stay for like another 5 minutes, but otherwise, what else we got? Like I said, maybe one or two more questions, and then we'll go. Similar to what the A-10 was used for. What? I know the A-10, but what is similar? Not the cluster bombs. Not the cluster bombs, because the A-10 was used for going after tanks and things like that. You were referring to something else, I suspect. I'm probably jumping into a conversation you were having with somebody else, I'm going to guess. Map. I can show you the map. There wasn't a lot of, there was map stuff at the beginning. Here's the map. Don't want to make you miss the map. There was map stuff at the beginning. So, oh, do you hear the water swallow? I'll step back when I swallow the water. All right. Hey, if the worst thing I do is water swallowing noises, you should thank God. Well, sure there is. If there's an issue with the bombs not going off, then being set off post-war, there is an issue with the bombs not going off. The ones we provide do better than the ones the Russians have. The Russians could have 30% of the bombs not going off. The percent we have, we hope ours is more like 2.3%. Nonetheless, it is an issue and it's a concern. But Ukraine's in a situation where they've got they're in danger of losing their own country, and and honestly, we don't make this point enough. Ukraine is making very few people using cluster bombs or deciding to use cluster bombs are using them on their own country. I mean, other than like evil dictators, but people haven't had to use them to liberate themselves, like what's going on with Ukraine. And I think not we, but I think a lot of people forget that part of the concern is, you're bombing somebody else's country and blah, blah, blah. In this case, it's your own. Now, it still is you're worrying about children. You are worried about children, right? Children playing with it and getting hurt. Thank you, Tomcat. But, talking about losing the country, I don't really think they have a choice. Nah. Blah. Blah. All right. I'm thinking, well, that's true. Thousands of Russian mines that will be left over too. Yeah. Yep. All right. Let me do a quick summary, guys, of the news. If I can find my second sheet here. And then I will hang on TikTok for a few minutes with the TikTok subscribers, just as a thank you. No offense, YouTubers. Don't get mad at me. Okay. All righty. I hope we can get some of the Russians to weigh in on Facebook before I go, because then I can block a bunch of them, which is always, I get my joy at the end of the show by blocking trolls. All right, it is day 504 of Vladimir Putin's very special 3-day special military operation. Putin has already lost the war, Biden said today at a press conference in Helsinki, Finland. Ukraine's deputy foreign minister says Ukraine captured several settlements south of, let's just say they captured several settlements today. They're advancing south of Bakhmut, and there's heavy fighting in a number of other cities. Sasha's doing fine. Twitch, there's no way for me to do it with Twitch is the problem. I literally click the button and it keeps going on TikTok. The Twitch people, though, you do get the weekend stuff. For what it's worth, you're paying a little bit less on Twitch for what it's worth than the other guys, because there was no way to set it up that way otherwise. Talkmock, about halfway between Zaporizhia and Melitopol, as many as 200 Russian soldiers and the commandant of the Russian-occupied town of Talkmock were reportedly killed by Ukrainians in an airstrike. U.S. cluster bombs have arrived in Ukraine, but they're not being used yet. Retired U.S. general said he thinks Prigozhin's already dead, but there's no evidence to back that up. Meanwhile, the Pentagon says the Wagner Group is not participating in any significant capacity in Ukraine at this point. The Wall Street Journal says that in the hours after the coup was launched, Putin arrested a number of top military folks, including General Surovikin, who is a friend of Prigozhin, and Surovikin is still in custody being interrogated. It's now been 2 or 3 weeks. Putin fired a top general who complained about the conditions that troops at the front were getting, including the weapons and everything else they weren't getting. And because he complained, he was fired, which is interesting. Biden says there's no real prospect of Putin using nukes either against the U.S. or NATO or within Ukraine. Russia's threatening to pull out of the Black Sea grain agreement. On the United Nations had a proposal that maybe Russia will accept. We'll see in the next few days. Thank you, Jerry. And a poll in Russia showed, oh, hang on. I've got more than that. Hungary will take up Sweden's NATO bid in mid-September. So they're dragging their feet after we found out that Turkey is also going to drag its feet. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said today that he has no doubt Ukraine will join NATO once the war is over. Russia and Belarus will not get formal invitations to the 2024 Paris Olympics, but their athletes most likely will be able to play, just not under their flags. And finally, a poll in Russia shows almost 3/4 of Russians oppose the use of nuclear weapons during the military operation in Ukraine. Only 11% supported using the weapons. That was interesting because, as I was pointing out, you'd think if people were afraid, they would say use the weapons, win the war. They wouldn't say lose the war. Lose the war even if we don't use weapons. Excuse me. If we don't use weapons, we lose the war. They wouldn't be okay with that. Thank you, Dawn. I don't think I've seen that one before. Oh, happy barras. Oh, those are those like Kupibaras or whatever they're called, right? That's cute. Thank you for that. All right, guys. It is 20 after. I'm going to call it quits. That was cute. I hadn't seen that one before. That was very funny. It's corn. Thank you, Pedro, for the corn. All right, guys. I'm going to get rolling. I will be back tomorrow, Friday. Remember to go check out the Discord. We've got 8 new auction items up. If another one arrives in the next day, it's going up too. I've got it in mind, but I haven't received it yet. But there's 8 really cool things. Actually, there's a number of cool things this week. Do go check it out if you're already a Discord member. Just discord.aravosis.com. Or if you're not, go check it out anyway, because they're cool stuff. And otherwise, I'll see you all tomorrow. And remember, Saturday, as always, at 11 a.m. Saturday, Eastern, that's Eastern time, US, New York City, New York City, Washington, D.C. time, we will be doing our coffee talk chat on TikTok and on YouTube, but via Discord. So it'll be on Discord and on TikTok for the paid subscribers. So that's the paid TikTok subscribers and the rest of you. And finally, I'm going to switch TikTok in a second so the paid subscribers can hang out another 5 minutes. All right. The rest of you all, thank you. I appreciate it. And I'll see you guys. Thank you, mods, as well. Thank you for the gifts. And TikTokers who are the paid subscribers, hang on, and I will figure out how to continue with you. The rest of you guys, have a good evening. Thanks, James. See you on Facebook there. Holding out on Facebook. See you guys.